Well, Doug Morgan, this was all your idea. How long's this project been underway?
Well, it's been at the back of my mind for 6 or 7 years since those panels have been put up, and it seemed a wasted opportunity. And it got nearer to the millennium on March the 22nd. I decided to write a letter to the editor of the Evening Gazette, and they immediately said, well, come up there, we'll take your photo under the panels with I was holding a poster of all army badges, and it sort of snowballed from there. I was given some good advice by someone that said, for God's sake, do it yourself, don't have a committee or you'll never get the thing underway. And so it's taken basically 9 months of letters and so forth. It's an incredible amount of red tape involved. But there we are, we're here now, and I feel proud and privileged to have had the opportunity to complete it.
Doug, what are these panels then? Why are those sort of inspection covers there in the wall?
They've actually got chains behind them that are keeping the wall from moving. Apparently it started to slip, and they can be viewed, these panels can be taken off and viewed, you see, on Titan presumably. And they've lain there, these black windows, and how much better they look now.
What a lovely idea, because the Balkan Gate has been with the military since Roman times.
The most extraordinary thing is that no one else thought of it. You know, tens of thousands of people in the course of a week go up here, and it's been there, and now we've got the 16 army badges up plus an ATS badge. There's 2 or 3 spare panels, and I'm getting phone calls from other regiments now. They're virtually clawing each other's eyes out to get their badge up, and we hope to fulfil that wish for 3 of them. The Royal Engineers we hope to put up, and of course the Royal Anglian Regiment, which is our county regiment. So things will be happening in the new year, and that's basically it.
As a taxi driver then, you must have had this idea buzzing up and down here.
Yes, I've mentioned it to my friends, and everyone that I've spoken to said, what a good idea. And you get pats on the back, say, what a good idea getting this money in, you know, but very often from people that don't give you anything.
Were there any worrying times when you didn't think it was going to work?
Well, the money initially, of course, was a worry, because we're talking about almost £4,000. But we had 1 or 2 very generous donations from individuals, £200 here, 200 there, 100 here. And then the army came in with their regimental associations, and the bulk of the money has come from the army, and a small select gathering of donors. Not a great deal from the players that you would expect in the town, but there we are. We got there in the end, and I thank everybody that has donated money and helping this project to be fulfilled.
Okay, the badges that you see here are actually representative from the regiments and corps of the British Army, who are currently serving in Colchester and will be at midnight on the 31st of January of this year. And as we mark the third millennium, I think it's a wonderful gesture, because actually the military, albeit Roman military, was stationed here in Colchester in the first millennium. And so that's where the linkage works in terms of which regiments, which corps, badges were going to be represented here, because obviously the British Army is much broader and wider than you just see represented here. So it's a direct link, really, between current Garrison and current Colchester for the new millennium.
How many badges are there on display?
I think there are about 16 altogether on display, with a few spare slots for, no doubt, more badges that might appear over the years to come.
Now, of course, it's been a very interesting time for the Garrison. New plans, new ideas, new building plans. Yes. How's all that coming together?
Yes, there's a massive investment taking place here in Colchester as far as the Army is concerned. First of all, following the Defence Review, the formation of 16 Air Assault Brigade, which is formed and is now headquartered here in Colchester, which is taking under its wing the Apache helicopter when it comes into service, with 3 regiments of Army Air Corps, plus the airborne capability, which is coming up from Aldershot. That is, in terms of investment, a massive commitment by the MOD to produce what is going to be the premier warfighting brigade for the Army, and one of its only type in the world. So that's one half of it. The other half of it is the investment into the complete redevelopment of Colchester Garrison using the government's private finance initiative. And we're well on course on that. And in fact, ministers appointed the preferred bidder for that project on the 20th of October. And we're now in detailed discussions with them, and they will be in detailed discussions with the borough and the planners, the members and the officials. But that's going to be a potentially £900 million contract spread over about 30 odd years of the contract life for the preferred bidder, a consortium made up of Sir Robert McAlpine, W.S. Atkins and Primary Management, to design, build, operate and maintain for us this garrison in Colchester. So that further, I think, weds the Army to the town on the basis of such a long contract, without which no one could be sure, in the 3 or 4 defence reviews which are going to go through over 30 years, whether in 15, 20 years there would be a military garrison here. We are convinced there will be. The government clearly is, and there's going to be a very significant investment in it, which I think will do a lot to also improve the quality of life of the soldiers when they're based here in Colchester, which is so important.
When might we see some work, some demolition of the old barracks and some building work? When might that happen?
A lot of people ask me that question, and I think all I can say probably is not before spring of 2001. There are many detailed plans, many detailed hurdles to go through, particularly all the detailed plans and permissions that will be required from the borough, not only for that part that we're going to retain as part of the garrison land, but also, particularly on the northern side of the garrison, the land that will be recycled and then developed by the developer. And those will attract a great deal of interest. But if that takes about a year, this is what we're assuming it will, then we hope to see serious work starting on site in the spring of 2001. But the prize then is a complete package of development within 42 months, as opposed to many, many years it would normally take using a traditional build programme.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the Balkan Gateway has been important since the army days of the Romans. Now, what about today, an important day?
It's very pleasant to see some soldiers going through the Balkan Gate today, isn't it? I think this is a splendid occasion. These badges will be looked at by people driving up and down Balkan Hill and people coming out of the car park, because of course you can't see them from that side of the road. I just hope there won't be too many accidents as people stop to look at them and go into the car in front. But it's great, seriously, to recognise yet again, as we so often do, the connection between the garrison and the town, which, as you say, has been so important since Roman times. It still is.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the people of the Borough of Colchester, I give you a very warm welcome on this very auspicious occasion. Colchester, as a garrison town, has a great deal to remember the county regiments, namely the Essex Yeomanry and the Essex Regiment, with particular favour. And it is fitting that today we should be putting up their two regimental badges with the collection which already exists here. The regimental system has, and I know only too well, based itself on the county system and the counties, and that really is to its strength and to its well-being. And the badges that we see today are a replica and a reaffirmation of that county link. I would like to thank the organisers particularly, especially Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, for making today possible. Thank you.
Now call upon Major General Richardson to say a few words prior to the unveiling of the Essex Yeomanry insignia.
Mr. Mayor, and ladies and gentlemen, and especially the old comrades of the Essex Regiment and the Essex Yeomanry who are here today with us, it is for me a great privilege as the President of the Essex Yeomanry Association to be invited to unveil our regimental badge on this Millennium Memorial. The Essex Yeomanry was originally formed in 1797, but we are thinking about the last 100 years. And 100 years ago, men from Essex and Colchester were serving with the Imperial Yeomanry in the Boer War. In 1901, the Essex Imperial Yeomanry was organised and created with its headquarters in Colchester and squadrons throughout the county. In 1909, when the Territorial Army was reorganised, they became the Essex Yeomanry Cavalry Regiment, and they also created the Essex Royal Horse Artillery, with their headquarters still in Colchester. They served with great distinction in the First War, both mounted and dismounted. And after the war, they were changed into a Royal Horse Artillery Regiment, this time with the headquarters in Chelmsford and a battery here in Colchester. At the beginning of the Second War, they were doubled in strength to 2 regiments, and men from Colchester and Essex served in the yeomanry in the desert, especially in the siege of Tobruk, in Burma, in Italy, in Normandy and the northwest Europe. And after the war continued as an artillery regiment until today. They are the Essex Yeomanry Signal Squadron, and they have members of that squadron serving in Bosnia and Kosovo today. And we have someone wearing the medal of that particular time who's going to help me unveil this memorial. Sadly, we no longer have a drill hall in Colchester because we have been reduced in size, but we are proud that the regiment has the freedom of this great city. And it is in fact enormous pleasure that I have today that we are delighted that we have got our regiment on this great memorial wall with our regimental badge as part of those who are so closely associated with this great city. And therefore it gives me the greatest pleasure to unveil the Essex Yeomanry badge today.
Colonel Morgan to say a few words prior to the unveiling of the Essex regimental badge.
Mayor of Colchester, Member of Parliament for Colchester, General Richardson, ladies and gentlemen. The links between Colchester and the Essex Regiment can be said to go back at least to 1871, when the depot of the 56th Foot was stationed in the town. From 1873, both the 56th Foot and the 44th Foot drew their recruits from Essex. In 1881, the 44th became the 1st Battalion of the Essex Regiment, and the 56th became the 2nd Battalion, the Essex Regiment, the Pompadours. Men from the borough of Colchester will have served continuously in the Essex Regiment from 1881 until the regiment amalgamated with the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment to form the 3rd East Anglian Regiment in 1958. At the turn of the last century, they will have fought with one or other of the 2 regular battalions in the South Africa War, the Boer War. In the First World War, they will have fought with the regular, territorial and service battalions on the Western Front, at Gallipoli and in Palestine. In the Second World War, they will have fought with the regular and territorial battalions in every theatre of war: Northwest Europe, Burma, the Western Desert, Tunisia, Italy, Iraq and East Africa. They too would have been at Tobruk with the Essex Yeomanry. They too would have been in Burma and Northwest Europe with the Essex Yeomanry. In addition, men from Colchester will have seen service with the regiment in, amongst other places, Egypt, the Sudan, Constantinople, India, Ireland, and after the war, in Korea. Colchester's sons will undoubtedly have made a truly significant contribution over the years to the regiment's high reputation. The 2nd Battalion of the Essex Regiment was stationed in Colchester in 1919. The 1st Battalion was stationed here from 1925 to 1929. And the 1st and the 2nd Battalions were amalgamated at Colchester in 1948. The 5th Battalion of the Essex Regiment, a territorial unit, had its headquarters at Colchester from 1883 until 1911. And when the 2nd 5th Battalion was formed in 1939, its battalion headquarters and headquarter company were based here in Colchester. Now the bonds between Colchester and the Essex Regiment were strengthened considerably by the presentation of the freedom of the borough to the regiment on the 30th of May 1946. The Freedom Scroll speaks of the borough, and I quote, being desirous of fastening the mutual attachment which is now and has for so long been enjoyed between our borough and the Essex Regiment, in which so many of our men of Colchester have been proud to serve and are continuing to serve, and being desirous also of recognising the gallantry and achievement of the regiment since its formation, and especially in the war of 1939-45. The borough conferred on the regiment the privilege, honour and distinction of marching through the streets of Colchester on all ceremonial occasions with bayonets fixed, colours flying, drums beating and bands playing. Now this was the greatest honour that any borough can bestow upon a regiment, and it's a source of immense pride to the members of the Essex Regiment Association and also to our successors in the Royal Anglian Regiment. It is also a great source of pride to those of us who served in the Essex Regiment that in 1930 Colchester presented the magnificent rose window in our regimental chapel at Whalley. The Essex Regiment Association is honoured to be involved with this imaginative project, for which the organisers deserve much praise and many congratulations. It gives me the very greatest pleasure to unveil this badge today, which will, I hope, provide a permanent reminder to the people of Essex that they once had a distinguished county regiment, and also of the strong bonds that existed between the Essex Regiment and the borough of Colchester.
Madam Mayoress, distinguished former service personnel of varying ages and current personnel, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great pleasure to have the final say, as it were, in what has been a wonderful project. But to set it in the scene, we are standing, as many of you know, in front of a triumphal arch from the 1st century of the 1st millennium of the Christian era. And in the last year of the 2nd millennium of the Christian era, I received a letter from this young man here, Mr. Douglas Morgan, who said he wanted to have a project to commemorate Colchester's military connections at the turn of the century, the 2nd millennium into the 3rd millennium. And he came up with the idea of badges, the crests, the emblems of the various regiments that had served in Colchester in relatively recent times and at that precise moment. I thought this was a brilliant idea, but I'll be quite honest, I didn't think it would come to pass. But I did not know Mr. Morgan at that time. I do now, and those of you who know him will know that he's a man of determination, of persuasion. He will badger people, and that's the appropriate word, badger in this context. A bit slow there this morning, ladies and gentlemen, but it was worth the try. And in the end, various regiments, past and present, agreed with this wonderful concept. And there are many people who need to be thanked. The people who have come forward, who have funded the various badges that we see down there. Individuals, old comrades associations, existing regiments. There's been a team effort all round, and it's been a great success. But above all, the person who we must individually and collectively thank is Mr. Morgan for bringing his dream to fruition. These badges are there for today's generation and for future generations. And I, as you can see, come from a generation which arrived after 1945, only just. In fact, I was born 9 months after the end of the Second World War, and those of you who know your arithmetic can work out it must have been one fantastic party that particular night when I was conceived. But anyway, we go forward now into the third millennium, and Colchester's proud military past is with us today, as it has been mentioned over many years. The Romans, of course, being the first who realised this was a good place to have a garrison. The Normans also thought it was a good idea, and then others over the centuries have as well. So I'm absolutely delighted, Douglas. I thank you on behalf of everybody here and those who have contributed who are not here for a wonderful idea. It's your dream, and it's now everybody's reality. Yeah. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well done. Very proud and privileged to have had the opportunity to bring this to fruition. Thank you very much for those kind words. Thank you.
Well done. For former Mayor of Colchester, Arthur Parsonson, is this an important link with the town?
Well, I think it most certainly is. I was perhaps historically bent in as much as I was the last mayor of the borough before reorganisation. I had the privilege, something like 25% of the town hall staff actually joined the Essex Yeomanry in the spring of 1939, and it was during the war I had the privilege to meet Major General Richardson as a subaltern, and particularly on the day that he took a troop of artillery round to Port-en-Basson behind Arromanches to help the Green Howards. And I know that Bob Bacon is partly organising this arrangement for the people in hospital. Can I just say, may they soon get very fit and on their way back home again. I don't know whether you'd like a word with General Richardson.
If we join, bring you in, Major General Richardson, what's your involvement in Colchester? How far back do you go with the town?
Well, my father was in the army too, actually, although my uncle was stationed in Colchester before the war. He was in the Royal Engineers, actually. We have family connections with East Anglia a great deal, but one of the reasons, in fact, because my family comes from East Anglia, that I was recruited into the Essex Yeomanry during the war, and how proud I was to be a member of that yeomanry, and of course after the war I became a regular officer. But as a junior subaltern, landing on the beach in Normandy with the most wonderful young men that ever were, and you see some of them here today a little bit older, but they were absolutely fantastic. They would go anywhere, and we got involved from the very beginning. We had the guns ashore in the first hour, and we then went on, that was with 50th Div, we went on then with the commandos, and after that, for the rest of the war with 8th Armoured Brigade, leading 30 Corps in almost every one of the great battles which we had to fight in Normandy, crossing the Seine, liberating Lille and Belgium, and then going to Arnhem and trying to get them organised too, which we got involved all the way through, and finding up with crossing the Rhine and liberating Bremen and in that part of the world. It was a great battle, but they were wonderful soldiers.
These shields here, important link for the town?
With who?
These shields, Garrison shields.
Well, I think it's wonderful actually, because we have had this long connection. I'm very sorry we haven't got a drill hall here anymore, but but that's only the reduction of the Territorial Army. But it is absolutely essential that the connection of this great county regiment, still in existence, should be commemorated here on this wall, and especially the amount that the Colchester people have done in the yeomanry over the last 100 years.
Can we just turn finally to Arthur Parsonson? As former mayor and way back, you've seen lots of changes with the garrison, haven't you? And
yes.
It's now being knocked down. How do you feel about the new ideas for the garrison, for Colchester?
Well, of course, I think we have to understand that a very much smaller army could be very much more in action and acting their role than we would have done. They have different equipment. But it's great to see that the Colchester Barracks will continue there. I mean, here we stand underneath the Balkerne Gate, which was built by the Romans on their way here, and through the centuries, Colchester has always had. During the year I was mayor, I went over to Northern Ireland and spent a week with a gunner regiment over there, and I always regarded the army in Colchester as our Colchestrians in khaki, and I think the town has always been very proud to have the army here, and usually commanding officers that have served here have always said that they felt it a very welcoming town. It always has been, and I think it may be. Well, there'll be the odd scrap outside a pub when somebody's had a little too much of the hard stuff, but on the whole, they get on really well together, and it's jolly nice to think that this will all help to cement that relationship.
There's just one thing I would like to say is that you're going to have the Quick Reaction Brigade based in Colchester. That includes actually the 7th Parachute Regiment of the Royal Horse Artillery, which I was privileged to command. And it's going to be a great thing for Colchester to be this very, very important brigade actually stationed here from now on. So the importance of the town with the links to the army will continue? Oh yes, great. It's one of the most important sections of our modern army. Colchester MP Bob Russell, another very significant day for Colchester.
I believe so. We have the Essex Yeomanry and the Essex Regiment, sadly both no longer with us, but their badges will be there for future generations to understand that Essex once had its own regiment, and the Yeomanry, of course, who had loyal service through both the wars of the last century, and they played their part in the life of this country, this county and this town. Douglas Morgan, whose idea it was, has taken a lot of trouble with this, hasn't he? He has indeed, but in Colchester circles, 18 months is a very short time. I think he's done remarkably well. When he first wrote to me with his idea, I thought, this is a great idea, but frankly, I don't think it will come off because it's going to need so much effort, so much input. But I didn't know the gentleman at the time, I do now, and he certainly did a fantastic job in getting individuals, organisations, regiments, associations of regiments that have gone, current regiments, to come together individually and collectively to provide what is a unique tribute to the military presence in Colchester in the latter part of the 20th century and the opening of the 21st century, so you've gone one millennium to the next, and here we are standing in front of the remains of the triumphal arch from when the Romans came here in the 1st century, the 1st millennium of the Christian era, so it's all symbolic. And of course there are going to be lots of changes on the military, on the garrison. A brand new garrison, what are your feelings? In effect a brand new garrison. There'll be 3 new barracks, 4 of the old barracks will go. I'm determined that the ethos that has made the Colchester garrison unique amongst garrison towns, because if you go to Aldershot, Catterick, there the garrison dominates those 2 communities. In Colchester, the garrison is the most important single aspect of the town of Colchester, but it doesn't dominate it. And I know, speaking to military families from men and women of all ranks, that they like Colchester because it's an ordinary town as they see it, with shops and cinemas, the Castle Park, and everything here is like you get in an ordinary town, but also a garrison town. They have the garrison family as well. They get the best of both worlds, and I guess we get the best of both worlds because the garrison is worth upwards of £100 million every year to the local economy, and that is a lot of money to provide lots of jobs and spending power in the local shops, pubs, clubs and what have you. And also, it has to be said, a lot of the civilian jobs which the partners bring, our hospitals and many of our other aspects of civilian life in Colchester, is supported by the civilian partner of a serving soldier. Well, Douglas Morgan, is this the final of your Millennium project?
Yes, it is, and I'm very pleased it is finished. It's been a long uphill struggle, so nearly 16 months now of letter writing, meetings and so forth. And then now the day's arrived, the last 2 badges, so we can put the show to bed.
What are the badges then today?
Well, there's 17 regimental badges, which are regiments stationed here at the time of the millennium, and there's 3 historical ones. That's the ATS regiment, the girls in the last war, and the Essex Yeomanry and the Essex Regiment. So it makes 20 badges in all, with a central caption explaining what the badges are about. The project cost approximately £4,000, money donated by various organisations, mainly of army nature. Didn't cost 800 million like the dome, and I think it probably give quite an amount of pleasure to all those people living in the borough.
It's quite significant, isn't it, Douglas, that you've put the badges here at an army Roman gateway?
Well, it is. Of course, there's been a garrison here since Roman times, and it's highly significant that this interview is right by the Balkerne Gate. It's a rather nice spin-off, is it not?
Got any other ideas for projects for Colchester in your role as a taxi driver?
Well, I'm finished retiring now. I would personally like to see an army museum in the town. I think that's long overdue. Place possibly where the old cavalry barracks is. I could imagine waxwork figures of the soldiers with their horses. It'd be a tremendous tableau there. And there's so much military hardware about that could be found, and it would be a spin-off for the town and a tourist attraction. I personally wouldn't mind being involved with that as a curator or an assistant curator, but just a pipe dream, obviously. But I'll push it if I get an opportunity.
Ben Oliver, what's the importance of today for you?
For me, well, it's nice to see that the Essex Regiment actually have got a badge in Colchester, and it's the first time I've ever seen it, and I'm glad it's here, and I am very, very pleased indeed.
Talk to me about what regiment you were in then.
2nd Battalion, Essex Regiment, the Pompadours.
And where did you see action?
In Holland, Belgium and into Germany, 1944-45.
And of course at that time you were probably the age group of the youth of today, is that right?
Oh yes, yes, 18 and a half in the line.
And really, they don't know nowadays what it's really like, do they?
Not really. I'd say if it came to the push, they would do the same again today. That's my personal opinion.
Turning to you, Harold Fensham, an important day for your old regiment.
Very important, yes. I mean, to get a plaque positioned as it is in the town is a great achievement for our council and the man who actually organised it. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
So where did you see action, Harold?
In the same as Ollie here. I mean, we were both met in the same trenches, as you might say, and we were, well, I was a reinforcement to help these out.
What were the conditions like, Harold?
Terrible, especially Arnhem and all around that area. I mean, and you get Zetton, Arnhem, Ede, and all those little villages. And we even got a commemoration plaque from a people of Holland who, were grateful for what we done. And
well, you're both survivors, which is important, but you left some colleagues behind, sadly.
Yes. A lot of colleagues. A lot, yeah. And that's the ones, we think about. They'll never grow old.